So we are live.
Namaste. Good morning and welcome to today's session on tourism at Crossroads, mainstreaming sustainability for the future of tourism. Ideally, given the importance of the subject, we should have been probably at the beginning of the entire Expo universe. However, I think we are in the heart of the sessions on the Expo, and it's a great privilege for me to be presenting this session to you on behalf of Responsible Tourism Society of India. India has long adopted sustainable tourism practices. A lot of stories go untold, unsung. Being one of the key economic sectors in India, driving and having the potential for high growth and development, job opportunities, infrastructure development, income distribution, and its potential and importance for being sustainable and also a non-polluting and an extremely beneficial segment across borders, across countries, across industries. In fact, tourism actually straddles a huge amount of interest within the Indian subcontinent itself. It is uplifting, its sense for upliftment and its sense for its ability for upliftment and development is immense. Sustainability currently is a global conversation, and as a driving force to combat climate change, I think tourism is one of these sectors that takes a great precedence in trying to convert an entire citizen forum into sustainable, into responsible travelers and citizens of the world. And in that sense, tourism can be a force of good. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the speakers for today's session. We'd like to invite. Can you hear me? Hello? Yeah. Am I audible? Yeah, it suddenly went away. I'm so sorry. Going. Yeah, I'm extremely privileged to be inviting and welcoming the keynote speaker for today, Shri G. Kamalavardhan Rao Garu, the Director General, Ministry of Tourism, Government of India. A few words about the distinguished keynote speaker here. He has been, Sri Rao Garu has been as the current Director General of the Ministry of Tourism. He's taken on a great role of leadership. I've heard him speak in several forums, and his vision for tourism and his support for sustainable travel is quite exemplary. He's also the Managing Director of ITDC. He's an IAS officer of the 1990 batch of the Kerala cadre. Over to you, sir, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Thank you so much, Shobhaji. I'm extremely honored to be here and delivering the keynote address on this occasion of having this session on responsible tourism and the sustainable tourism. And as far as responsibility is concerned, yes, mankind has seen an unprecedented pandemic in the last 2 years. So we have been witnessing that. We have been struggling to survive. And the way we have closed down our countries, the boundaries have been closed down. Aviation sector has been shut down, and the hospitals have been struggling. There's a severe stress on the hospital systems in the country. Globally, people have been witnessing severe crisis. Almost all 5 million people have lost their lives, and India alone has lost 500,000 people. And still, it is now different variants are coming up, and we are struggling to understand what kind of variant is this, and we are struggling to get out of this pandemic with a lot of vaccination. Every country, they have closed down their boundaries, and they've started their now the health system also. They've started going for vaccinations in a big way, and India is showing the lead, thankfully, with 150 crore, almost all 150 crores of vaccination has already been done. It is a remarkable achievement, thanks to Government of India and the state governments and the pharmaceutical industry in this country. And everybody is being extremely responsible, whether it is declaring, the World WHO has declared the protocols of health protocols have been declared. Every country is following it very diligently, and this is the time for us to be as responsible as ever. Maybe after the World War II, we are witnessing this kind of crisis, and for all ages, the mankind have to remember this present times, and learn from the past, and also the future generations also. I'm sure it will be learning from all the protocols of the survivors of the present world from this pandemic. So now the responsibility of everybody in participating this virtually itself shows how responsible we are. So coming back to sustainability and responsible tourism in the world, all started in 1992 when the sustainable goals were clearly earmarked or announced in the Earth Summit, which was held in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. UNWTO 178 countries have participated then, and there was a call for global cooperation or a partnership within the countries to talk about the sustainable development goals in the world. And later, taking the cue from 1992 Earth Summit of Rio, later in 2000, the Millennium Summit was held when the UN headquarters in New York, then where Millennium Development Goals were designed. They were planned out by all the participant countries. Countries have entered into bilateral agreements in developing sustainable goals for the millennium. And in 2002, if you noticed the World Summit, which was held in South Africa on sustainable development, where in fact the word of the sustainable development, the word of responsible tourism has been coined by Harold Goodwin. Of course, without touching Mr. Goodwin's name, we will not be talking about responsible tourism. And in 2015 is the very, very important summit which was held in New York again, which spoke about the sustainable development goals, where 175 countries again participated, which set the agenda for 2030. So the agenda was set for 2030, and which was, again followed by Paris Agreement on the climate change. So these are all the efforts globally. These are all efforts of the internationally, which have been happening, which have been taking place consciously to maintain sustainability in all the sectors. And tourism is one of the important sectors which provides almost 11% to 13% of employment globally, and ranges between 7% to 9% of GDP of many countries. In fact, some of the countries in like Thailand and Paris and then Turkey, the main GDP of more than 25% to 35% GDP is from tourism sector. All of us know about that. So what is this sustainable development, and what is sustainable tourism? And UNWTO, if you take the definition of sustainable tourism, UNWTO has clearly given a definition that it's to conserve environment resources and protect biodiversity, and respect resources of the cultures of the host communities while benefiting the local communities. And thirdly, to address the needs and the benefits of the industry, that is the tourism industry as such. So taking the cue from these enshrined principles of UNWTO giving definition on responsible tourism. If you take the best of the examples of internationally, Bhutan, everybody claims the World Travel Tourism Council's report, a recent report says that the best example of the sustainable tourism is from Bhutan, which speaks about high value and the low impact. How do you, because Bhutan also geographically, it is located in a very delicate, the Himalayan ranges, where the glaciers preservation is very important. And the people who enter Bhutan, they're not concentrating on mass tourism with five-star properties, five-star hotels. They're concentrating much on the homestays, and where this is high value tourism is there, but impact is low. And secondly, we have Fiji, which speaks about the solar. I'm only quoting the 3-4 countries where the responsible tourism are being practiced in a big way, which are becoming examples internationally to emulate. So the Fiji is another area where some of the hotels are practicing solar energy, usage of solar energy in producing energy, and showing path to other hotel industries globally, how to maintain hotels and how to maintain resorts. Another place, very small place, but Mdumbi in South Africa, that is also being discussed in on international forums, how waste management and energy efficiency systems are created by the local population by involving all the locals coming together and exchanging knowledge between society to society, between country to country. Belize is another example which people talk on the international fora, which are rainforest environment sustainability models are created in this by the volunteers in Belize. And so if you come to Switzerland, in Switzerland also Swiss Foundation for Solidarity on the improvement of the livelihoods of visitors. Every visitor is given some kind of opportunity to interact with these the members of the Swiss Foundation of Solidarity. So these are the finest examples of responsible tourism. As far as India is concerned, since most of the speakers at the audience is India, I would like to focus much on Indian examples on sustainable responsible tourism. See, if you take Alps, the Himalayan ranges. Alps it stretches from 1,200 kilometers the length, and the Himalayan ranges is 2,500 kilometers range. So both are oldest glaciers in the world. But Alps, if you see the way it is being used for the skiing purpose, the way it is used for the hotel construction purpose, it is completely it is a mass tourism, which is what they are promoting, mass tourism, which they are trying to focus on. So now environmentalists are really troubled. Environmentalists are really showing their apprehensions whether how long this is going to happen. Alps is going to be sustained in the international skiing world. So they're going for different areas other than France. They are searching for new areas of for the skiing purpose and the hotel purpose. So if you take Himalayan range, Niti Aayog has come out in 2018 with a report on Indian Himalayan range, how to maintain the glaciers there. People are seeing, because of the climate change, glaciers are melting very fast. Untimely rains are there. Very lot of due to heat. The local population also giving some complaints there. So we Minister of Tourism, when we as a part of our outreach program, when we went to Ladakh and Srinagar, we interacted with the officials there, including the LG in Ladakh, and the LG was mentioning that you talk about Nubra Valley or Khardongla Pass, which is the highest motorable pass in the world, 18,000 feet height, where people go for adventure tourism, and they also do some biking there. So they were all mentioning that we should not go for any five-star hotels there. So more than 17 flights are landing in Leh every day. More than 72 flights are taking off and landing in Srinagar. So Can you go for 5-star properties there? Can you go for 3-star properties there? Can you go for mass tourism there? No. That has to be regulated like Bhutan. Bhutan regulates the entry into Bhutan. Per day, there is a limit. Per day, there is a number which cannot be exceeded. So in Khardungla Pass, in Nubra Valley, in Leh, people are talking about homestays. Let us promote homestays there. Let us involve local population there, and therefore increase the responsible tourism. We will have to be more responsible in that way, because the posterity should not accuse the present generations saying that we have not maintained, because the development, if you take, urbanization is another thing which I wanted to concentrate today's point, that the mass scale of urbanization. So the urbanization, there should be no planning, should precede the development. It should not the other way. We are allowing the development to take place in a very, very haphazard manner, whether it is near the oceans, whether near the forest, whether near the cities. We allow urbanization to take place, and later, after 10 to 15 years or 25 years later, we suddenly realize that there's too much of urbanization. We want to have flyovers, we want to have tunnels, so it is difficult. Planning should precede the development. So therefore, where near the oceans, what kind of urbanization is taking place? Near the wildlife sanctuaries, so what kind of urbanization is taking place? We have to plan very meticulously for the future generations. In that way, coastal regulation zone is a very important intervention by the judiciary, which happened in this country. Even in USA, even in Russia, judiciary is interfered, and with that intervention, new laws were promulgated in maintaining coastal areas in USA. That in India, coastal regulation zone is very successfully maintained and followed by all. This CRZ Act is in place, and CRZ guidelines are in place. So any environmental development which is coming up, it is taken up very seriously, which goes only in consonance with the guidelines and the rules and regulations as per the CRZ Act. So we have seen 2018 the mega floods in Kerala, where more than 450 people died. So when Honorable Prime Minister visited that place, I happened to be there as a Principal Secretary PWD. So the only one question which Honorable Prime Minister asked, how did these people die? And the state administration responded saying that it is because of the landslides. Then Honorable Prime Minister mentioned that these landslides are taking place because of unbridled permissions given for the construction of buildings there. We have to be very meticulous in planning of buildings. So if you don't plan, it's the destinations. Okay, then when you are talking about the destinations, Run of Kutch is a wonderful destination which was marketed globally by Honorable Prime Minister when he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat. So if you see the Run of Kutch, you don't find 5-star properties there, but it's only tented accommodation is given. So if you go for 5-star properties there, and again you will have the sustainability concept. There will not be any meaning if you go for going for all kinds of destinations, whether it is Lakshadweep, whether it is Andaman Nicobar. So these are the areas which we have to protect very delicately and very cautiously. And the hotel development also should take place in a very cautious manner. So Harold Goodwin, one of his lectures also mentioned that local population have to be involved in that. If you take Kerala, again, an example, district administration, 30% of the total budget of the state government of Kerala goes for district and panchayats, local bodies budgets. So local population, local bodies are involved in preparing the master plans for the destinations locally, and the local self-help groups are also involved in taking care of supply. They participate in the supply chain management of the hotels. They take care of the plantations of the vegetables. The linen, washing of the linen, or the tour operators, the local houseboats, the catamaran people. So entire society is involved in development of tourism in Kerala. Similarly in Kashmir, similarly in Leh, and many of the parts which we are mentioning about, whether it is in Australia, near remote places in Sydney, in Brisbane, the local population is showing some interest in coming up and taking care of the tourists as the part of their communities. Ultimately the international tourists or domestic tourists, they should become a part of the local population. So otherwise, this anti-social elements, the Naxal movement, for example, has become a very serious challenge, a socio-political challenge, because as per the economists would mention that these people were not, wherever the Naxalbari movement took place and the Naxal movement spread, the local population could not be involved in the major development major development process of that particular area. So if many hotels are coming up, in whether it's in Kumaragam in Kerala, or whether it is in Nubra Valley, or in Orissa, industrialization taking place, if the local population is not included, there will be social unrest. This is the most important aspect. Just to mitigate social unrest, we should not give any scope for the social unrest. That is the reason why the responsible tourism takes a prominent role in the overall economy of any country. So, Government of India, Ministry of Tourism, interacting regularly with all the state governments and informing them about the ecological sustainability, environmental sustainability, and by involving the local communities. And who are the major players other than the government and the judiciary in protecting the environment and helping this responsible tourism is NGOs. So and society as such. Many NGOs, they file cases in high courts and Supreme Court. They fight if at all there is any violation by any of the players in the world, in the country. So NGOs must be promoted. They should also be encouraged in taking up these social issues, while they're breaking the norms, breaking the rules. So these are the issues which I wanted to share with you about sustainable tourism and the responsible tourism. We are sure we cannot, especially in the world of in the times of pandemic, we need to be very cautious in promoting this, because domestic tourism has really become it has really become very challenging now, due to the pandemic and all. So we must be careful in protection of oceans, protection of environment, protection of in promoting urbanization. I wanted to mention one point which is very important when you talk about the transportation, because tourism is nothing but an amalgamation of all the systems, of amalgamation of all the sectors. It is an embodiment of all the sectors is tourism. So the transportation, the roads, new technologies have come up in the formation of the roads, in the soil stabilization and the slope stabilizations. So new technologies have to be utilized in this. And I'm sure the planners, the urban planners, the tourism planners across the globe will understand the Millennium Sustainable Goals and make plans according to the local needs and the necessity of the people and the stakeholders involved in the entire tourism sector. So with this, I thank Vicky for giving me this opportunity in sharing my thoughts with all the viewers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kamalawardhan Rao Garu. That I was quite impressed to see that the point you made about planning that should precede development, and also picking up very sensitive, eco-sensitive areas like Ladakh and Lakshadweep and also Andaman Nicobar. I think these are areas where we can actually, at this point in time, create an exemplary blueprint for what tourism should look like in these areas. And we hope that Responsible Tourism Society of India, UNEP, FICCI, and also GSTC can really work with the government to come up with great ideas and policies for you to implement. Thank you so much. That was really, it was great to start off on that note. And I hope a lot of what you said will become a part of what we'll be discussing and we'll be talking about, our speakers will be talking about as we go along. Thank you, sir. I'd like to now invite Dr. Manoj Kumar Singh of MP Tourism. So welcome on board. It's a great honor for you for us to have you present the sustainable tourism practices, sustainable hospitality prospects of MP tourism, which has been in the forefront of tourism for a very long time. Nobody can combat that. The marketing initiatives, especially your narratives and your storytelling for MP tourism, has been absolutely world-class in the last few years that I have seen in the tourism industry. Dr. Manoj Kumar Singh is currently heading the Department of Skills and Training in the MP Tourism, Madhya Pradesh Tourism Board, playing a key role in developing responsible tourism mission, working in different sectors, especially in the community tourism in the last 30 years. Welcome, sir, and over to you.
Thank you very much. Respected Rao sir, Rakesh Mathur sahab, Palwa sahab, and experts team. Madhya Pradesh Tourism Board is working for the responsible tourism mission last 2 years. And Madhya Pradesh Tourism Board tried to develop the community, responsible towards community and responsible towards environment. Towards community, we are trying for the socio-economic development and stakeholders also, and environment protections. We are doing for the some special issues in ground level and near destinations through community development and local people. We are developed some projects as a rural tourism project, tribal tourism project, and cultural experience-based tourism project for the development of local people and involvement of local people for the community will be friendly to the destinations. Our second project is a safe tourism destination for women. The project is basically based on the women traveler for the safety and they are enjoy the better experience in Madhya Pradesh. And one is different project is other project is the responsible souvenir project, which is developed by the local community. The responsible and design, marketing, production part is the support from the Madhya Pradesh Tourism Board. We are working with the support of Kerala Responsible Tourism Mission and International Center for the Responsible Tourism UK, Mr. Harold Goodwin. They are continuous support to us for the developing the responsible tourism mission activities in Madhya Pradesh. We have a little film. We have a film within 5 minutes in the little initiatives of the Madhya Pradesh Tourism Board. Please show it.
Thank you, sir.
Department of Tourism, Madhya Pradesh takes pride to introduce the responsible tourism mission of the state. There are 3 major pillars of responsible tourism, that is, social development through community participation, economic enhancement, and environmental conservation. Madhya Pradesh Tourism Board has set 6 core values to implement responsible tourism. In this endeavor, the department has signed MOU with Responsible Tourism Mission, Kerala, International Center for Responsible Tourism, UK, and UN Women. Various projects are being implemented under the umbrella of responsible tourism. These projects are rural tourism. The rural tourism project is being implemented in 100 selected villages of Madhya Pradesh. These villages represent the culture of various parts of Madhya Pradesh. The major components of the project are convenient stay at village, local excursions, local cuisine and culture, art and craft, skill and training. The department has started work in 60 villages by partnering with 50 NGOs and 18 departments of central and state government. The department is also focused to benefit the rural communities by holding their hands for agro-based tourism. The project will provide direct, indirect livelihood opportunities to 10,000 families. 6 villages have been started hosting guests. Responsible souvenir, art and craft. Madhya Pradesh Tourism aims to promote the local artisans by developing handloom and handicraft through Responsible Souvenir Development Project. Madhya Pradesh Tourism is also handhold the artisans for designing and also developing market linkages for them. Madhya Pradesh Tourism has impaneled Pashu Pakshi for market linkages, product design and training of the local community for product development. 2 art and craft centers have already been started in Madla and Thamna villages, where community learns and produces new crafts and get fair price. Safe tourism destinations for women in Madhya Pradesh. There is a need to create women-friendly environment especially in the tourism destinations with the support of a local community. Therefore, Madhya Pradesh Tourism Board is implementing the project Safe Tourism Destinations for Women in Madhya Pradesh. This project is being implemented with the support of Women and Child Development Department, Government of India. Few of the major objectives of this program are to enable fearless women-friendly environment and workforce, coordination among stakeholders for development of women-friendly public infrastructure, community participation and awareness towards women's safety, and building of community-based institutions. We also intend to increase livelihood opportunities for girls and women. Also, we would like to promote women workforce participation through skill enhancement programs. We will achieve our objectives with the help of various activities like capacity building and sensitization of all concerned stakeholders, strengthening of safety mechanism by safety audits, training support in foreign languages, skill enhancement of around 10,000 women, self-defense training to around 40,000 girls and women, identification of infra gaps and coordination with concerned departments, information and local support system, convergence with line departments, government and private players, and formation of associations and federations of local stakeholders for support in Phase 1. To make tourist destinations women-friendly, we are maximizing women work participation through trainings in e-rickshaw or taxi driving, Path Pradarshak, Scout Leader, City Explorer, Location Manager, Shopkeeper, Hawker, Security Guard, Computer Operator, Tour Expert, Cook, Steward, Bell Girls, Front Office, Delivery Girls, Ticketing or Billing, Street Food Vendors, Housekeeping, Handicraft or Guest House Manager. Other projects under the umbrella of RTMR, Solid Liquid Waste Management, Accessibility Audit, Tribes Tourism, Agriculture Tourism, and Astronomy Tourism. The efforts of the department has also brought laurels to the state by winning prestigious awards in the category Destinations Building Back Better Post-COVID, Global and Gold for its Rural Tourism Project and for Safe Tourism Destination for Women project at WTM London, along with Gold Scotch Award. The department is committed to accomplish its mission under the able guidance of Honorable Chief Minister Shri Shivraj Singh Chauhan. The department is all ready to play a lead role in facilitating the stakeholders. Do join us, क्योंकि हमें है इंतजार आपका। हिंदुस्तान के दिल में दिल खोल के घूमो।
थैंक यू वेरी मच। आपने इस फिल्म को देखा तो इसमें हमारे प्रोजेक्ट्स के बारे में आपको हमने बताया और इसमें वेल स्पीक टू मिस्टर राव एंड एज एक्सप्लेन वेरी वेल कि रिस्पॉन्सिबल टूरिज्म में कौन कौन से कंपोनेंट्स हो सकते हैं, कहाँ पे हमें काम करना चाहिए और इन सारे कंपोनेंट्स पे हम लोग काम कर रहे हैं। इसमें एक मेजर इनपुट ये है कि गवर्नमेंट के 18 डिपार्टमेंट्स के साथ कोऑर्डिनेशन है और मोर देन 50 एनजीओज इसमें साथ में काम कर रहे हैं, तो उनकी अपनी स्टेक होल्डिंग है और स्टेक होल्डर के प्रमोशन के लिए इसमें साथ में काम किया जा रहा है। थैंक यू वेरी मच फिकी और RTSOI जिन्होंने हमें ये मौका दिया और यहाँ कोऑर्डिनेट किया इस काम को करने के लिए। धन्यवाद।
Thank you, Dr. Manoj Kumar Singh ji. It was a great insight into all the work that MP Tourism is doing. It's always been a pleasure to watch all the initiatives by MP Tourism. I've personally been a part of all the festivals you've done recently. Of course, the festival in Mandu, which is a great way to showcase the smaller destinations in your state. We have a couple of videos coming up, and one is by Orissa Tourism and the other by Punjab Tourism. And I would like to tell you that for long, tourism has been inundated with success stories from Rajasthan and from Kerala. But you know that with the number of states and union territories we have, each state and union territory in India is a little gem in itself. To be promoting these under the shadows of what Rajasthan and Kerala has been able to achieve is a dream project. But I'm very happy to say in the last 5-6 years, I think I've been seeing a lot of state tourism boards, a lot of state tourism, a lot of states and their tourism offices have been coming up with exemplary ideas. One of the things that Odisha has done, and I've been privy to it because I was trying to do some work with them, is the eco-tourism camps that Odisha Tourism has done. And I would really, it would be a great pleasure for me to have the video of the Odisha tourism to be presented here.
India, a global destination for sustainable tourism. Where the government is empowering people to take up responsible tourism as a mission. Encouraging nature-friendly tourism products. Eco-living initiatives. Community living through homestays. Offering sustained livelihood to the local communities. Promoting reuse and recycle of water and eco-friendly practices. Teaching homestead farmers take up vegetable cultivation and supply to hotels. Breathing organic opulence. Conserving forest and wildlife. Goal is sustainable. Destination is India.
Incredible India.
Apologies, that was the Incredible India. That was the Incredible India video. It will be followed by the Odisha tourism one. Yeah, go ahead, guys. Manish, are we having the Odisha tourism clip? Hi, Manish, are you going to put the Odisha tourism?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks. Sorry. You might want to play the Punjab tourism first. That's all right.
Good afternoon.
Yes, thank you. It's coming.
Yeah, good afternoon. I hope I am audible.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Shobha. We actually don't have a video, but we'll be giving a PowerPoint presentation.
Okay. So you have, yeah, so I can't see you, but you have about 5 minutes. Is that all right?
Yeah, perfectly
Okay,
all right.
fine.
I'll
Great.
just quickly cover
Yeah.
the presentation.
Great.
So good
Thank you so
afternoon
much.
good afternoon and a happy new year to all of you who are participating today's session on responsible and sustainable tourism. I am Mohammad Nahar. I am the project management unit head of Odisha Tourism. And today I will be presenting the initiatives which Odisha government has taken up under the responsible and sustainable tourism segment of the state. So to give you a brief background about Odisha for our global audience, Odisha is a state which is located in the eastern part of India. It is a state which is gifted with almost everything a tourist would like to, experience and explore. Perhaps, without with the exception of desert and maybe snow-clad mountains, the state has almost everything that a tourist would like to see and experience. So as you can see from this slide, it has a varied profile of tourism offerings, starting from religious and heritage tourism to coastal and wetland tourism, to wildlife tourism, to ethnic tourism, etc. So what we have to offer is a pristine, landscapes and nature, which, as the previous speakers were mentioning, unlike many of those prominent tourist states of India, Odisha is a state which is still to be explored. All these areas are virgin, pristine, and therefore it offers a very unique experience to the travelers when it comes to ecotourism, sustainable tourism, etc. Now, when it comes to responsible and sustainable tourism, we identify certain elements of the state as our pillars. So these pillars can be found in the form of, the pristine nature, in the form of wildlife sanctuaries, tiger reserves, and national park, biosphere reserve, and the 80 kilometers. And of course, Chilika, the world's second largest brackish water lagoon. The second important pillar is our own indigenous communities. We have around 24% of the state's population as tribal communities, and their life and lifestyle would be of much interest for serious travelers. Thirdly, almost 40% of the state's geographical area is currently under forest cover. And lastly, we have initiated a new model called the community ecotourism model, out of which around 45 plus ecotour camps, which have been promoted by the state government. Now, when it comes to this community-based ecotourism model of Odisha, it is popularly known as Ecotour Odisha as a brand. The state government has initiated this particular initiative through a sponsored system, where which we've started identifying destinations across the state which have potential to be marketed as ecotourism destinations. And in each of these identified destinations, government has adopted a multi-pronged strategy, wherein we started with product development, capacity building of these communities, and also in development of various eco-friendly infrastructure, followed by a series of marketing and promotional initiatives, which was done aggressively both within the country as well as outside the country. And this has resulted in generating a lot of interest, followed by visitation to all these, to all these places by tourists. And some of these models have individually become very, noteworthy initiatives because of the potential of its employment generation and revenue generation. So the most interesting feature is that almost 60% of people who have been engaged under this Ecotour Odisha camp are women. And therefore, their families are also getting directly benefited out of it. And out of the total revenue that is being generated through this initiative, almost 90% of it goes to the communities living in that area. So this is about the ecotourism initiative. Now coming to sustainable tourism initiatives, government is doing a series of things to promote various elements of sustainable tourism, for which we have identified areas to promote, very unique and niche stays. Like we have beach resorts all across Odisha, all along the coastal parts of Odisha. We have forest resorts, we have riverbank camping, we have resorts which are overlooking lakes. We have properties where people can go and stay on the hill stations, etc. And when it comes to sustainable offerings and experiences, we have come out with a lot of engaging, activities like water sports, adventure sports, nature trails, culture trails, etc. Now, in short, or in summary, what the government is trying to do is to promote more of community managed, community operated, nature tourism camps. We have also formulated schemes to promote homestays in different parts of the state, through which individual families and entrepreneurs from the very remote areas of the state can get benefits. We are also in the process of upgrading the boats through another scheme. We are training local youth to become guides, etc. And lastly, we are also promoting our destination development through an integrated master planning process, where sustainability and responsible tourism is the foundational base. Now, blue flag certification is another aspect. With respect to the recognitions which we had received for taking all these initiatives, I would like to highlight some of the recent and the most important ones. So this UNWTO award under the most promising tourism enterprise category, the government the Mangala Jodi Ecotourism Trust, which is essentially an NGO promoted initiative, have won UNWTO award. And then we've also received awards like India Responsible Tourism Award as the best future forward state during 2021. We've received Ecotourism Initiative Awards from FICCI. And of course, Blue Flag Beach certification is one recognition which we would like to highlight here. We are also in the process of developing another 5 more beaches in the state to gain this Blue Flag Beach certification. And the recent award that we would like to mention here is the India Best Award by Travel and Living magazine. So with this, I end my presentation and take this opportunity to extend an invitation to each one of you to come visit Odisha and discover and experience India's best kept secret. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really clear and crisp. And thank you for introducing us to the destinations once again from the lens of sustainable travel. Now for a video from Punjab Tourism. Yeah, Manish? Yeah.
The land of community kitchens, where food is philosophy. From the sweet taste of syrupy jalebis to the iconic Rajma Chawal and Kadi Chawal, come celebrate Punjab's great bounty. Welcome to India's breadbasket.
Welcome to
Punjab, the blessed bountiful land. Their fertile land nurtures its people. People who know how to celebrate life. To be a Punjabi is to live life king size. Come visit the land of bliss. Come visit my Punjab.
Welcome to Punjab.
Escape the madding crowd and experience a new way of living. Enjoy the lush green fields and get a true essence of the land. Breathe in the fresh air. Come Immerse yourself in nature's lap.
Great, thank you so much. I love that. I love that thought around lunchtime where food is philosophy. On that note, I'd like to proceed ahead. I think we've completed all the presentations, the state presentations. Yeah, today's session on mainstreaming sustainability is actually a crucial conversation in the times that we are in. So the way the panel of speakers has been put together by Responsible Tourism Society of India is to create a group of people from different associations and within the industry and also outside the industry, which is basically associations like GSTC and UNEP. And also a couple of stakeholders like Hemant Mendirata is there, who's been into luxury travel for a very long time, to create a conversation about what we believe at Responsible Tourism Society of India is a very collaborative way to promote sustainable travel, not only among the stakeholders, but also bring in the government perspective, which will be given by Dr. H.S. Pavla Saab, and also from the perspective of collaborations between the associations like Responsible Tourism Society of India, UNEP, and GSTC. I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce Rakesh ji, the president, the honorary president, and the president and founding member of RTSOI, the honorary president and founding member of RTSOI, a great leader we all look forward to and proudly, which is the reason why we proudly call ourselves as a part of Responsible Tourism Society of India. Rakesh ji wears many hats, and he's been in the industry for a very long time. To be seeing the changes that have been occurring in the industry, especially those that are driving that is driving sustainable travel. The former executive director of IHG for South and Western Asia, former president of Welcome Heritage Hotels. Rakesh sir has been instrumental in actually bringing all of us together under Responsible Tourism Society of India, which was originally started in 2008 as Eco-Tourism Society of India. It has, just around the pandemic, it has a new name, it has a new drive, and it has a new focus in the name of Responsible Tourism Society of India, under which we have not only endeavor to bring in the stakeholders and the government, but also believe that it is the traveler who will finally drive the tenets of responsible travel, and those are the people who will actually reinforce the need for responsible travel, which is why we have the initiative called the Responsible Travel Campaign, which in a bit, when Rakesh sir will talk about the initiatives, you will also see a few examples of the same. Over to you, Rakesh sir.
Thank you very much, Shobha, and thank you and good afternoon, everyone. So without much ado, I will straight away launch myself into what all we are doing to address some of the issues that were spoken about in the previous presentations and by the Director General Tourism. As Shobha has mentioned, first I'll go through the challenges and objectives, and then I'll share with you some of the initiatives that we have launched. What were our major challenges? I think our first and primary challenge was educating and sensitizing both travelers and travel service providers. This amounts to actually changing mindsets, changing the habits that people are used to working the way they are working, about changing their mindsets to think differently, whether it is about what we are wasting, what plastics we are using, how we can change into how we can reduce, reuse, etc. So the second major challenge in our country is that 70% of our industry is in the informal sector, and it is extremely difficult to actually exercise some form of direct control over the informal sector. And therefore, again, changing of mindsets becomes a very, very important role over a period of time. The third major challenge that we faced, in our opinion, was that tourism as an industry generates substantial wastage and affluence. And not that we are the maximum producers of pollution and wastage and affluence. There are other industries like the chemical industry, but certainly we produce a substantial amount of what I would say, I don't want to use the word garbage, but wastage in a sense. Let us not also forget that the higher the luxury, the higher the environment cost. And I often give examples of importing food and consuming it in places which really don't warrant, where it is necessary to consume to consume local food. And there is an environment cost to luxury. That is what we at RTSOI do believe in. And finally, a big challenge that we face is actually implementing the sustainable tourism criteria of India, which is based on the global GSTC, if I may say so, though it needs to be revised regularly. But the original STCI was based on the GSTC. What are some of our objectives? So naturally, some of our objectives are to sensitize both service providers and the travelers through workshops. And when I say service providers, I not only mean hotels, I also mean travel agents, I mean transporters. I include guides in that very category. The second objective emanating from our challenges is we have been impressing upon the various levels of governance to introduce a compulsory responsible citizenship subject in every school across India. As I said, this involves the entire activity involves changing of mindsets in our country, and therefore it begins at the school level, at the childhood level, and at the education level. Whereas we are talking about workshops for the adults, we are talking about educating children in being responsible citizens. The next objective is for us to work very closely with the government on carrying capacity studies. Earlier it was pointed out about various problems that have arisen due to the overflux of domestic tourists. And therefore, carrying capacity studies have become very, very important at this stage. The next objective is to help the governments, the state governments, as well as the central government, discover alternate destinations, which can be built and promoted for tourists all over the country. The next objective, I would say, and that is, in my opinion, very, very important, there has to be a mechanism in place in high tourism density destinations to punish the violator. I think there has to be a price that the violator must pay. When I use the word punish, I don't mean it in a negative sense. There should be a price that the violator pays for any code of conduct in responsible tourism that is laid down. Now, there are mechanisms for that. And I remember as I grew up in Simla, there were signs and signages, and there was something known as a tourism warden, which was in the form of an empowered police, which went around, and if any violation was found, there was an immediate fine that went with it. And finally, of course, another objective is work on waste management very, very closely, especially plastics. And on this, we are going to be working very closely with UNEP. So some of the initiatives that we have, to come down to some of the initiatives that we have launched in the last couple of years and which we are actively pursuing. I think the first initiative, in my opinion, is the very renaming of the Ecotourism Society of India as the Responsible Tourism Society of India, because that makes it more inclusive. It brings into focus what others have been talking about engaging with the community, the differently abled, looking after the interest of the lesser privileged, and so on and so forth. And with this goes what we have termed as the code of conduct for safe and honorable children, safe and honorable tourism, which looks at empowerment of women and children, and looking after their interest so that they are not misused in the travel and tourism community. The second most important initiative was evolving of the sustainable tourism criteria of India with the Ministry of Tourism, Government of India. The third most important initiative was we conducted 23 workshops in about 20 states over the last couple of years. And these workshops were aimed towards sensitizing the travel service providers. We have built a resource center where a lot of material is available on anybody who wants to do some research and study. And this resource center is being slowly evolved, but it is there. Next, we exchange regularly among a lot of best practices amongst our members through various means, namely newsletters. We printed an ecotourism handbook, plus we have several publications, but there is regular newsletters where we exchange best practices on a regular basis. Next, we have enhanced engagement with the travel fraternity through a series of webinars that we conduct, and which are actually organized by Shobha herself. So that has taken our engagement with the travel fraternity and with our membership to a very, very prominent level. Next, we have signed an MOU with the United Nations Environment Program and with the Ministry of Tourism to work together. And I think this is a landmark achievement where three major institutions will come together and there will be common purpose established to achieve common goals. And of course, this goes with other MOUs that we have signed with institutions like WWF and the Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage. We have assisted the government of Manipur in putting together an ecotourism policy, and we are currently assisting three other state governments, namely Himachal, Odisha, Meghalaya. We have embarked on a very ambitious program of certifying ecotourism destinations, and we have certified currently Skywalk by Empyrean, which is based near Jammu, and we are working currently on Karma Lakeland, which is based on the outskirts of Delhi in the state of Haryana. We have appointed conveners and goodwill ambassadors, and this will broad base our presence in different states. So we currently have conveners in 3 or 4 states, and we are in the process of appointing more. We have done a study with the assistance and guidance of Dr. Pabla, who's very much on this panel, on harmonizing wildlife, harmonizing the experience in wildlife tourism areas. And that is something that we wish to present to the Ministry of Environment and Forests, so that the tourist experience is let's say, harmonized in a way. We have also commenced a study on prevention of ill practices in trapping, taming, and training of animals, for example, elephants for that matter. So that is another study which is going on. And I said earlier, we'll be working closely with UNEP on the plastic waste management scheme that we are evolving. The last 3 initiatives that I wish to talk about, one which is very, very close to all our hearts, is a self-certification scheme. We have evolved a self-certification document where we want our members and the industry at large to certify themselves with the proviso of being open to inspection at any point in time. Now, this self-certification will demonstrate how committed you are to sustainable environmental practices. Then we have, for tourism service providers, we have evolved an environment charter, which we have widely distributed to our members, and which is what we expect them to implement. And last but not the least, and one of our most important and one of our most passionate endeavors is what we call the Responsible Traveler Campaign, where we are trying to, if I may use the word, sensitize or educate the traveler to be more responsible. So these are some of the initiatives. I will not take more of your time. I will only request Shobha to show at least 2 videos that we have prepared for the Responsible Traveler Campaign. And that is what I wanted to talk about. Thank you so much, Shobha.
Thank you, Rakesh. Thank you very much. And Manish, we have those 2 videos. So what we did with the responsible travel campaigns is that we kind of looked at celebrities, both in the industry and out of the industry. And of course, we banked heavily on the Bollywood industry. Basically, the idea is to take the message of being a responsible traveler out to the masses. So in keeping with the idea of how to mainstream sustainability and how to mainstream responsible traveler, the idea is to take it to the end user who's our traveler. And that is how these videos have come about. So one is by Kabir Bedi, which Manish will show up just now. And one is from a lady called Dr. Latika Nath, who is an environment crusader, and also has been and earlier she was a lodge owner, and she's well known as the Tiger Princess of India. So we have these 2 videos to show you. Over to you, Manish.
Hi, I'm Kabir Bedi. We are all hoping that when this pandemic abates, we can all start traveling again. We can go and see the mountains, forests, lakes, beautiful historical monuments, picturesque backwaters, float down rivers, go to game reserves, all the wonderful places we want to go. But the world in which we are now traveling is different. In the same way that we protect ourselves, we need to protect our environment and the planet. Every time you go to a place, contribute to its economy, buy local, respect its environment by not leaving behind plastic and paper and all the rubbish that tourists normally leave. Leave the place better than when you found it. Be a responsible traveler and support the Responsible Tourism Society of India.
My name is Latika Nath. As a qualified conservation biologist, a great traveler, and a hotelier myself, I have had occasion to see just how good tourism can be when done responsibly. We have had the opportunity to read many articles and in fact see on the news the impacts of global warming, climate change, and heard that nearly 1 million species across the world are under the threat of extinction. We need to ensure that we practice responsible, sustainable tourism in all that we do. With the cooperation of the industry, we can change many trends now and prevent the further decline of the environment. This is the only planet we have, the blue planet. It's the one we call home. We need to do something immediately to ensure its long-term survival and the survival of life on Earth. Join me, become responsible, become sustainable, join hands with the Responsible Tourism Society of India to change the face of tourism in India.
Thank you, Manish. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, I just want to add that we have several such videos by various celebrities and bloggers and so on. And we have been able to give them very, very, very wide publicity in social media. But actually, a campaign like this needs to be taken at the national level on national media. And for that, we need sponsorships. So we are looking at sponsorships for such videos to be taken on the national platform. With this, I would now like to introduce Mr. Atul Bagai. Mr. Atul Bagai, who will say a few words. Mr. Bagai is a career civil servant who rose to become the director. He is an IAS officer who rose to become the director ozone for the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change, Government of India. After that, while he was still with the service, he joined the United Nations Environment Programme in the year 2000 as country head. And he continues in that role and leads various global environmental, the global environmental agenda of the United Nations in this region. He works very closely with global environmental institutions and the Government of India, various ministries in the Government of India. He has launched several key initiatives, and now we are very proud that we have signed an MOU under him, under his being in charge of UNEP, with UNEP and the Ministry of Tourism. Thank you very much, Mr. Bagai, for supporting us, and over to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mathur Saab, and I would like to also welcome the DG Tourism and all the state government representatives. Listening to the DG and to the three presentations that were made by the state governments, and actually it was all music to my ears. I was so happy to hear state governments and central government talking about responsible tourism, talking about sustainable tourism. And actually that is one of the jobs which I have as country head of India, to bring stakeholders together and to make them leverage action on certain environmental issues. I wanted to just highlight a couple of points. I know we are running late also, so I won't take too long, but I wanted to highlight why are we talking of responsible tourism or sustainable tourism now and over the last 1 decade or something. It's very important that not only the industry, but the government and all other stakeholders in the tourism sector start being on the same page and start talking about sustainable tourism. The year 2021, which was all of us in our memory is the year 2020 and 2021, the year of the COVID-19. But year 2021 was also the beginning and the launch of a decade of ecosystem and restoration and biodiversity. And why was at a global level a decision like that taken? It was largely because of the triple planetary crisis that we are all facing, the crisis of climate change, the crisis of nature, and the crisis of pollution. And the tourism sector has an impact and impinges on all these three crises in a major way. And it was these three planetary crises that at the global level, it was decided that the next 1 decade, which is also called the decade of action, should focus on ecosystem restoration and biodiversity mitigation. And that was largely also because the loss of ecosystem over the last 40 to 50 years is what led to, proven by certain scientific studies, the zoonotic diseases that have been hitting the globe over the last 20, 30 years, the last being certainly COVID-19. In fact, our Secretary General, in a very recent remarks at the Columbia University, said that we are waging a war against nature and we need to make peace with nature. And I think nothing else defines this peace with nature more than what tourism sector is trying to do through sustainable tourism, or tourism sector should do in this field. And I'm very happy and proud that, as Mathuji was saying, that the MOU that we have signed with the Ministry of Tourism and with RTSOI is a beginning, which also shows the forward-looking vision of the Secretary Arvind, or Secretary of Ministry of Tourism, and his entire team. And we are really looking forward to the Ministry of Tourism launching the Sustainable Tourism Policy. I'll conclude by just something that I gathered from one of the first seminars we organized on Responsible Traveler campaign, which was organized by RTSOI. And I was very taken up by one of the speakers who said that, and of course, in tourism sector, the clarion call and the fundamental principle in the Indian tradition also is that every tourist or every person is Atithi. Atithi Devo Bhav is what we all talk about. And the speaker said that we need to go a step further. And I think that summarizes the whole sustainable tourism policy, that we should start looking at, in addition to Atithi Devo Bhav, Prakriti Devo Bhav. We need to look at nature as our God, and we need to preserve our nature. And I think for tourism sector, it's very, very critical, very, very essential that if they need to survive, they need to look at nature in a very different lens and preserve it. Thank you very much for inviting UNEP for this. I have my colleague also who would be speaking on the panel, Helena, and I'm sure she'll certainly talk about what UNEP can do to support these initiatives of the Indian government and RTSOI. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bagai. That was absolutely fabulous. I completely second the thought that we need to make peace and we need to fall in love with our climate and our environment once more. Rakesh, do you want to? Rakesh, do you want to close do you want to say something in to close the?
No, thank you very much,
Okay.
Ulji. I think you can proceed with the rest of the speakers.
Great. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So continuing from here, we have several speakers who will be speaking on various subject matters, and which kind of will form the crux of this the session on sustainable travel today. So we have with us next Dr. H.S. Pavla. Dr. H.S. Pavla is an ally. Is an ally for tourism, and he says he's infamous for it, but I think in the travel business, you're actually famous for that, Dr. Pavla. And now as an international consultant for forestry and wildlife management, and also authored about 4 books, and he's on to his 5th on wildlife conservation.
Welcome.
Dr. H.S. Pavla had joined the Indian Forest Service in 1997 and retired as the Chief Wildlife Warden of Madhya Pradesh in 2012. He's a great believer, and this is something I really take to heart, is that he's a great believer in active wildlife management and believes that wildlife conservation as an ecological and moral pursuit is a very limiting factor. Hence, it must fit into the economic planning, which is why he supports tourism as a strong driver for conservation in India. Over to you, Dr. Pavla. So you're muted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shobhaji, thank you very much for this introduction. All this a minor correction that I entered Forest Service since 1977, not in 1997.
Sorry, sir, it's 1977. I written it down as 1977.
Yes,
my apologies. 1977, yes.
But thank you very much, MOT, RTSOI, and FICCI for inviting me to be on this August panel. Because of my background, I'll be speaking primarily from the perspective of wildlife tourism in India, because I don't know anything about the industry side of tourism. Now, we all know that ecotourism or wildlife tourism specifically, perhaps the fastest growing segments of leisure travel. While tourism is in general has historically grown at about 4% per annum, ecotourism has grown at about 9 to 10% the last several years, of course, before COVID struck. Interestingly, and I think probably shockingly, Ecotourism has grown in India despite it being almost illegal until last year. This is because the central government at some stage after 1980 had designated ecotourism as a non-forest activity vis-a-vis the Forest Conservation Act 1980. As we know, no non-forest activity can be allowed on forest land without the prior approval of the central government. But no state had ever sought a central approval for letting people into forests for tourism or recreation. Therefore, forest officers were always hesitant to promote tourism in forest lands, despite realizing that tourism helped conservation. However, all that has now changed. Since 2012 or so, things started changing. Government has recently amended the rule book that branded ecotourism as a non-forest activity. Now states need no permission from central government for allowing people to visit forests, except where they want to build big structures or they want to lease out forest land to some private entity. Thus, the road to develop ecotourism in the country has now been defined, but it is only a dirt track at present. A lot more needs to be done to make this dirt track into a highway and make ecotourism a significant conservation and economic driver. These steps, because time is short, I'm rushing through these points, are, in my opinion, number one, first priority is that now ecotourism is a mainstream forestry activity, which now primarily becomes the job of the forest department, mandatory job of the forest department. Every forester must be properly trained in planning, implementing, regulating tourism in forest lands. So far, we were doing it as some kind of a side job, but now it has become a primary mandatory job of the forest department. Although, number two, nearly 25% of our forests have been identified as wildlife-rich forests, tourism is currently limited to about 2% of it. In fact, there's a legal cap, de facto, of 5%. Not more than 5% of a forest can at present be used for ecotourism. That is why popular destinations are extremely overcrowded at present. We must review this cap and spread tourism thinly and widely in all forests in order to make it sustainable as well as economically viable. Number three, wildlife experience in India is mostly limited to game drives and tiger reserves, although there are other activities, but not too many. We need to diversify this experience into other low-impact activities such as birding, hiking, cycling, camping, sitting in hides and watchtowers to watch wild animals in order to accommodate more visitors and also to give them a more wholesome experience. And lastly, private sector has been given absolutely no role in the development of ecotourism experience and product at present, except providing transport, hospitality, and some interpretation. Without the participation of private sector, either in the form of public-private partnerships or partnerships with the local communities who are the primary target of benefits from ecotourism, ecotourism is unlikely to reach any significant level in economic terms. We should use PPP mode or partnerships with the communities for opening and developing new ecotourism destinations. We must also introduce the concept of private conservancies and private wildlife reserves. If private sector starts investing in wild spaces and wildlife, we can take ecotourism to an entirely new level, as has happened in the case of many other industries in India. Maharashtra has already done it in a limited way. They have started creating private and community conservancies. where the private sector can set up businesses adjoining national parks and sanctuaries, and private lands can be used for creating into wildlife habitats. Other states must also follow now. Although a lot more needs to be done, these few initiatives can lend a whole new dimension to ecotourism and wildlife tourism in the country. I will stop here, as I'm sure I have already overshot my limited time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if we have time at the end of this session. Thank you very much, and a very happy new year to everybody. Thank you, Shobha.
Thank you, Dr. Pabla. That was really succinct and good. I was some of the things that you've mentioned about the concept of private conservancies is something I'm very, very keen to know more about, and I think that will be time for another conversation on responsible tourism India webinars. Moving forward, I have with me CB Ramkumar. CB, are you there?
कहाँ फेंका था? इसका जब किया था?
Oh, Mr. Bagai. CB, are you there? I can't see you. Can you spotlight CB for me, please, Manish?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, I can't see. Yeah, I don't have. Yes, CB, I can see you. Can you spotlight Mr. CB Ramkumar? Yeah. Hi, CB. Hi, CB. This is welcome, CB, on board, and thank you for taking the time on a Sunday afternoon. CB is here as the board member of and the regional representative for South Asia for the Global Sustainable Tourism Council. However, I've known CB for a very, very long time, and he's one of my inspirations, which is why he is also a motivational speaker. He's also a keynote speaker on issues and on solutions regarding sustainable tourism. He, as a hotelier par excellence, is one of those beautiful hotels that he built a long time ago, way before his time, which was, I was telling him, called Our Native Village. It ticked all the boxes that you could ever think of where responsible travel or sustainable tourism is concerned. So welcome on board, CB, and I really look forward to listening to your views and thoughts on sustainable travel. CB, I think you're muted, CB. Are you? I can't hear you. No, can't hear. Yeah, Manish, can you see if he's muted from our end?
No, ma'am. From our end, it's perfectly fine.
Okay, CB, no, can't hear. Do you want to re-log in or? Can anyone else hear, or is it only me?
We can't hear.
Okay.
It's possible because of his Bluetooth.
Yeah, it could be because of the Bluetooth. Yeah.
So may I request you, sir, please disconnect this Bluetooth.
Bluetooth is disconnected.
Yes, we can hear you now. Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, it's good to be here. Thank you, Shobha, for the introduction. I'm going to talk a bit about sustainable tourism as defined by the United Nations. So as Shobha mentioned, I'm from the Global Sustainable Tourism Council. I've been part of the GSTC since almost its inception in 2007, 2008. In India, we have the India Working Group, which governs a lot of the work that we do in sustainable tourism in the country. Now, the GSTC was formed as a result of the various Earth summits that were held by the United Nations. And it needed a body to govern standards in sustainable tourism globally. So the GSTC was formed by the United Nations system. It was formed to develop standards that are applicable globally, which is what it did. These standards were developed for 3 different sectors, which is the tour operators, the hoteliers, and destination. And these standards are governed by all global and UN norms in terms of third-party verification. And these standards have been operationalized across various countries. So what the GSTC has done is it has developed a framework for implementation of sustainable tourism practices. We've heard of the few speakers who came before me in terms of the various states who have different responsible tourism missions that they have implemented. Similarly, there are a couple of hundred resorts and a couple of thousand resorts and hotels who have done very good work, and tour operators and destinations who have done very good work in the space of sustainable tourism across the world. Now, what the GSTC has done, what was charged by the United Nations for GSTC to do, was to develop an institutional framework that can be adopted, that can be implemented, so that we don't just rely on anecdotal centers of excellence that come up because of pure passion by a few individuals or organizations. For anything in life, we need frameworks. We need roadmaps to ensure that everybody can follow it uniformly, to ensure that once everybody follows it uniformly, there is a way of ensuring that this uniformity governs then the standard on its own. So what the GSTC has done is it has developed an institutional framework, standards. We have developed the standards, and the standards are out there on our website and everywhere else for anybody to adopt. It's free of charge for the whole world. Of course, if you want to go into certification, there's an entire different process to it. The reason I'm talking about the framework is because invariably we hear of a lot of instances, like I said, of individual excellence, of individual resorts, individuals. Now it's important that we put all of that into a framework which everybody else can follow. Some people are more aware, some people are less aware, to ensure that we democratize the knowledge of sustainable tourism is why these frameworks were developed, and which is the reason why GSTC has been doing what it's doing. As mentioned earlier, we are governed by the United Nations framework, so all our activities are independently verified by third-party verification, including our membership with the ICL Alliance and various other global bodies, to ensure that there is a uniform development of sustainable standards which can be applied anywhere in the world. Now, once we have these frameworks, what is needed is for these frameworks to be adopted by countries, by organizations. Like I said earlier, it's available free of charge. Anybody can download it, anybody can follow it in a voluntary manner. But what this also does for countries is, and there are many countries around the world who adopted it, they adopt the GSTC standards as a framework to use for their own country. So countries have taken the GSTC framework and developed their own individual national standards, so to speak. The Sustainable Tourism Criteria of India is one such, which I think Rakesh mentioned a little while earlier. That exists for the country, but again, like Rakesh said, that needs to be adopted, that needs to be updated, because the standards that the GSTC develop are regularly updated as per the UN mandate. Again, every 4 years or earlier or later, it is updated to ensure that it is current for anybody to follow. So once there are national standards formed for a country, then what happens is the countries can then incentivize the industry to start to follow the national standards, and the country can then ensure that all tourism stakeholders in the country start to follow a set pattern or a set framework or a set roadmap that is universally applicable for a country. If that doesn't happen, you'll have individual centers of excellence. You'll have people doing more, people doing less. There will not be any uniformity. And this uniformity is needed eventually for market access, as we call it. Travelers need to know which are the hotels, resorts, travel operators, destinations that they can go to, which are tagged and which are individually certified according to global norms that they are indeed responsible or they are indeed sustainable. So this expose that's needed for the travelers, again, we need a framework for it. So this framework is available from the GSTC and it's available for all countries to sort of follow, and it is happening. It's being rolled out globally as we speak. Now, having said this, we also require the travelers to then come forward and follow what is known as, responsible tourism practices, and which is what Responsible Tourism Society of India has done an absolutely brilliant job. All the videos, I think we saw only 2 of them there. I've seen all of them. And I worked closely with the Responsible Tourism Society of India ever since its inception. They are educating travelers to follow responsible tourism practices. And that is a very, very important aspect, because when travelers start to demand responsibility of the industry starts to follow those norms. So there are 2 ways industries fall in place. One is demand from the travelers, or the other one is legislation by the government. And I always tell CEOs, legislation is coming, because the tourism industry consumes resources which are disproportionate to the value it adds back to the economy. And this is something for the travel industry to keep in mind very, very carefully, because when you consume resources which are disproportionate to the value we add back to the national or state economies, one day it will become highlighted and legislation will force us to sort of fall in line. The other way of falling in line is when travelers demand it. So the campaign done by Responsible Tourism Society of India is pushing the travelers on one side to demand responsible action by the industry and from themselves. Like Kabir Bedi said in that message, we want travelers also to be responsible when they travel, to act responsibly towards society, buy local products. So all that is what RTSOI is highlighting. And GSTC is sort of, is looking forward to working closely with RTSOI to ensure that, there is total synergy across various sectors. And it's my personal belief that sustainability will only move forward if all stakeholders hold their hands together, which is what the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 17 talks about. It talks about partnership. It's very important because the imperative is quite urgent. We talk about climate change issues, which are very urgent. Considering the urgency, it's important that a lot of people come together, hold hands, and move this entire conversation and take it to the next level to action. And when we start to act is when the planet starts to respond to our abuse, as it was put out there by Atul. So it is important that all of us come together, and we hope to do that with the RTSOI and move the entire discussion towards action when it comes to India and sustainable tourism. Shobha?
Thank you, CB. That was succinctly put. And yes, action is what is required now. And I really like the idea that we all have to work, join hands and work together, because it's in working and walking together is when the action can be magnified, and this whole ideal of mainstreaming sustainable travel can actually be seen in practice. Thank you so much, CB. I'd like to bring in Hemant Medirata here. Hemant, can we spotlight Hemant, please? Yeah. Hi, Hemant. It's lovely to have you on board. Thank you for giving us time on a Sunday afternoon.
Pleasure.
So you all know, I mean, I'm sure most of you would know Hemant with his with years in the Oberoi Hotel. Hemant for me is actually like a walking luxury travel luxury expert. However, when he talks about marketing, and that's the role he is today, he's donned this role of being a chief advisor for international leisure business for Leela Palaces and Hotels, and also the founder of One Rep Global, a sales and marketing PR advisory for ultra luxury and luxury hospitality brands. He brings to the conversation something which is very crucial. We've spoken about association associations, we've spoken about how we should all work together, we've spoken about action, but how do we market these things? I mean, how do we put all of this together, and how do we draw that essential difference between a product and a sustainable and a sensitive product? And that's, I think, where the conversation with Hemant will take us. Over to you, Hemant.
Thank you very much, Shobha. And coming after CB, actually, I like to echo a lot of those points, what he said. So marketing is one of the foundational aspects of running any business. Without marketing, you can't build public awareness. Even a Shah Rukh Khan film requires a lot of marketing to be done. And nowhere is this more important than in the hospitality and tourism space, where we are selling experiences and we are selling more intangibles. The global hospitality sector is worth more than 2 trillion US. And mostly brands spend anywhere between 3 to 5% of their annual sales into marketing. So even if it's 3% of 2 trillion, it's 60 billion US, which is being spent on marketing every year by the hospitality industry alone. It's a lot more complex today than our traditional definitions. To me, I describe marketing as a journey or a process that a brand undertakes to communicate the core values and benefits of its product to its customers. The ultimate goal is that both the marketer and the consumer should be aligned, and they should agree that this is the value that the product or the service brings. Today, the consumer is also very different. And if you're selling in India, where the median age is just 29 years as compared to a 44 in France or a 47 in Japan, and 70% of India's population is below 35 years, it's a different ballgame altogether. Consumers are seeking a purpose in their buying decision. And it's this higher purpose what responsible marketing is all about. So responsible marketing is an approach that ensures you not only meet consumer needs, but also having a positive impact on them and the community that you're both a part of. It's about building trust. There are a number of ways that a brand can do it. It's much more an active state for brands. It's one thing to be conscious. It's altogether something else to be something impactful with that consciousness. So it's a very active state and not passive. It's more than just watching, it's actually doing. So how can we make a true difference in a consumer's life? Not just offering a function, it means looking beyond the product. It's about being active and having positive intent. There is an example I like to quote. I don't know how many of you have heard of it, but there is Hilton Meetings in the hospitality space launched 6 months ago. And they said, we'll offer carbon neutral meetings at no additional cost to limit the environmental impact of its operation and achieve their collective ambitions. The footprint of all business meetings at participating hotels are being offset through carbon credits. Now, there is an organization which took the lead. They are investing their own money. Consumer is not paying for it, but actually this is the step that they've taken proactively. I must also say that responsible marketing is not about not making money. The sole purpose of organizations and businesses is to make money. However, responsible marketing is not about prioritizing it in the brand's action. It's about prioritizing their activities and their communications around their consumer needs. While profits they'll still make, it's not at the front and center. It's not the central intent. Consciousness is the intent. And once that is there, in the words of Mr. M.S. Oberoi, the founder of Oberoi Hotels, he used to say, do the right things and profits will follow. So in responsible marketing, profit is not in front and center. Consumers are, and the cause is. The collective community is at the front and center. There is another example I read yesterday. Etihad Airlines launched something called as conscious choices in their loyalty program, which means they are saying that if customers carry less baggage, they will get tier miles as benefits because they are contributing towards the environment. So these are examples where, and of course, we all know that airline industry is a big contributor to the effect it's having on our environment today. So here are some examples of brands that have actually gone ahead and they are doing something about it. And it's all about effective communication. So as CB also said, it's how do you influence behavior? You know, there are, you have to, one is the product needs to change and how we market it. And secondly, we need to influence behavior from the consumer side so that he chooses you over other options. The traditional mix with 4 Ps, as we all know, product, price, place, and promotion, conventionally played a lead role in influencing consumers. However, all that is now changing because the customer is a lot more informed, whether it's through the internet or it's a much younger customer, especially in India. And those 4 Ps are now being changed to people, planet, profit, and progress. Hence, in conclusion, I would say a higher purpose, a conscious culture and leadership supported by trust and community first are the ingredients every brand needs to imbibe for responsible marketing. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Hemant. Thank you for the new 4 Ps, which I think will be incorporated into all our businesses now. Yeah, I completely agree with you that first and foremost, everything begins with awareness. And I think brands like OneRep Global, brands and organizations like Responsible Tourism of India, one of our first and foremost ideals is to actually create that bit of awareness. A person who is aware, I believe, cannot do anything wrong. I mean, if you're awake or you're woke, as they call it, you will do things right. Thank you so much for those inputs. Thank you so much, Hemant. Yeah, over to, yeah.
Sorry, I missed there was a lag.
Yeah, okay, no, I was just thanking you for your time. And I know it was
pleasure, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, thank you. Helena, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah, hi Helena. I'm just dying to have a Shakti on among one of the speakers. So we've had a hugely male bastion over here. Can you spotlight Helena, please? Hi Helena, good to see you. Still morning for you, so good morning. So we have Helena Ray from United Nations Environment Program Economy Division, Paris, and who's been been very, very helpful with our inputs as we were designing this program for you. Quickly, a brief about Helena. She works at UNEP, at the Consumption and Production Unit of UNEP Paris, and is responsible for mainstreaming sustainable consumption and production patterns in the tourism value chain. I think a very, very important aspect as we talk about mainstreaming tourism and also building awareness for the industry. Over to you, Helena.
Thank you, Shobha. I'm delighted to participate on this panel on behalf of UNEP to provide some insights on how sustainable tourism can support the recovery and resilience of the sector. We all know that the unprecedented health and sanitary crisis have shown that tourism cannot be developed in isolation. We need to improve the dialogue, to strengthen cooperation among businesses, local authorities, and civil society, and work with vulnerable groups, as mentioned today by many Indian states, is essential. COVID has highlighted the importance of putting environmental resilience at the core of the recovery. And as the tourism sector rebuilds worldwide, business will need to implement strategies that ensure health and safety of consumers and staff, while minimizing environmental impacts of their operation and supporting local communities. Many governments worldwide are now revising their tourism policies to integrate environmental protection. The old tourism policies that we have known and master plans, they were developed for a time span of 10 years. They now need to be more flexible and agile to respond to the triple planetary crisis of nature, waste and pollution, and climate. As mentioned before, consumers want to have more responsible travel. And consumer research suggests that the pandemic has made most travelers want to travel more sustainably in the future. There are concerns about excess waste, threats to local wildlife and natural habitats, overcrowded at popular destinations. Nobody wants now to be in crowded destinations. And concerns about the impacts to climate change are very high on the agenda. We should take advantage of this trend and moment to drive sustainable tourism into the mainstream. This change requires tourism diversification and development of sustainable offers that will require finance and technical support from governments and private sector to respond to this new tourism demand. India is ranked 98th in the 98th position of the Euromonitor International Sustainable Travel Index. The ranking is determined by 57 indicators, including environmental, social, and economic sustainability. Country risk, as well as sustainable tourism demand, transport and lodging, all those are criteria that it's monitored. Sustainability is a severe risk factor for tourism competitiveness in India, as shown by this Sustainable Travel Index. So India has still a lot of work to do, but it has all the good people and ideas as we could have seen today. And the government of India has already realized the opportunities sustainable tourism can bring and have started developing a sustainable tourism policy aligned to sustainability principles. So we are in a good way, in a good path. However, to transform tourism, financial support is needed for building the capacity of tourism stakeholders, for establishing mechanisms that ensure nature protection, pollution control, strengthen tourism governance, and investment in training programs and business development is a key condition for the green transition of SMEs, which is the key foundation of the Indian tourism economy. So it includes sustainable consumption and production, and tourism also offer enormous opportunities to protect the environment while fostering social inclusion and sustainable economic development through decent jobs. As we move forward, we need to align policies and investments. We need to measure and report policy coherence. We need to adopt key indicators covering environmental, social, and economic aspects, such as implementing GSTC sustainable criteria mentioned by our previous speakers, both for business and destinations. We need to create partnerships and cooperate across the value chain to make a real change. The good news is that as the travel picks up again, we have an opportunity to do better and make the tourism more sustainable. Back to you, Shobha, and thanks for this opportunity to share our views on this discussion.
Thank you, Helena. Thank you. That was it was great sharing. And one of the things that really resonated with me is the fact that we should that the government has to help us both financially and in policy decisions. I think that is a very, very key factor. Thank you, Helena. There are some questions that I'd like to take. And in case anyone has a question, they can unmute themselves and ask. Helena, this question is to you. Just a second. As we spoke about a lot of policy and the principles and the frameworks that we've had a lot of participants also speaking about it. What do you think now post-pandemic? I mean, as we draw to to the end, hopefully, of the pandemic, what do you think are the priorities for the government, stakeholders, and the businesses? What do you think we should all prioritize at this point in time?
Thank you, Shobha, for this question. I think that one of the things that we need to have very clear is that we need to establish measurement, reporting, and verification systems. We need that all government and businesses start as urgency measuring water, energy consumption, GHG emissions, and pollution. To monitor progress, we need to measure. And I think this we have to start now. If the business have not done so, now it's time. We have a lot of, and as was mentioned before, legislation will come in. And it's better that we are prepared and we start measuring those before regulation comes. I think there is a need for acceleration of sustainable infrastructure and retrofitting towards net zero emissions. I think that there is a lot of technology that is still needs to be taken up, and sustainable infrastructure and retrofitting is essential for us to be more resource efficient and to have more efficient operations. I think another thing mentioned over and over is the need to build awareness and capacity in the preservation of the environment and in the prevention of pollution. I think this is essential as we build back better. And as mentioned by Rakesh, supporting SMEs, that is the foundation of the Indian society. It's a huge priority. But also supporting destinations, vulnerable groups, including women, as mentioned by some of the good examples today, and youth is essential for responsible tourism to thrive. We had good examples today, indeed, but we need to have more. And I think that a joint collaborative effort is essential for this collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Helena. Thanks a lot. There is another question. Hemant, this is for you. Since we're talking about marketing, and I've been doing this for a long time, since 2003, and one of the major challenges for me is how to get a tour operator to promote a heritage hotel, for instance, vis-a-vis a branded hotel, a corporate brand, which is giving a room at a lower price. How do we encourage and how do we kind of motivate tour operators to actually start looking at contributing to responsible travel?
Sure. Good question, Shobha. So there are 4 ways in which you can influence behavior. It's called Sam, Dam, Dand, and Bhed. So either you can use, as it was said by CB, legislation is coming, which is coercion, kind of coercion. But what has happened with coercion? You have cigarette packets, which we have ghastly pictures on those, but still people are smoking them. So second is incentivization, where, but more than this, it's all about education. And I want to give you a personal example. 25 years ago, I went to the US and I go into a Starbucks and I, of course, want to eat that breakfast, that half a kilo muffin. But it mentions that there is some 450 calories in it. Now that was education for me. I had never known that it contained so many calories. And that made me eat it, but made me regret it for quite a few days. But that was education. Somebody did that. Now, hotels do say, if you don't want your towel to be washed, or if you don't want room to be serviced, or sheets not to be changed, please put this card, etc. That's only one part. Whereas, are we telling them that if you don't do this, or if you do this action, it will help XYZ? And secondly, are we incentivizing them? Can we not give 100 points in their loyalty program? Because look at the cost benefit analysis also of it, even if it's a pure business decision. So incentivization, coercion, combination. Your question about tour operators, how do we tell them? Firstly, make them members of RTSY. And then that way, at least they are well informed, and we have to spread the awareness, and we have to spread the knowledge of why they should do this. Number two, we can actually give them choices. So if a customer wants, no, I want to stay at an XYZ hotel, the tour operator can give a choice saying, hey, you wanted this particular hotel, but here is your choice, but here is an alternate choice, which is a more sustainable option. Sustainable does not mean non-luxury. Today, sustainability is the new luxury. So it's all about education and then incentivization, which can help achieve our cause.
Great. While I have you there, and we still have about a few minutes to go, luxury, this whole coding around luxury is all about excesses, Hemant. I mean, that's one of the things I've been arguing against, because everything is big. Everything is in multiples. Everything is about, luxury means you have to change your sheets morning and evening. Now, this switch to say that, no, that is not luxury is going to come at it's going to be very, very difficult. How would you address that?
Again, as I mentioned, so don't change the seats, but you get 100 points or 200 points in your loyalty program. This is reward.
No, I mean in your narrative, in your marketing narrative. This is at the operational level. In your marketing narrative, how do you put this out in your marketing narrative, not in your operations? Operations, yes, that is a word. How do you say that, having a mile-long buffet is no longer the luxury that you're seeking? Because these are things that we have fought against and said, farm to table versus a mile-long.
Zero-mile menus. No, but zero-mile menus are in. If you look at a lot of hotels, they are actually doing these kind of things now. It all begins with consumers asking for it. If you want to make this radical change, because as a hotelier, you are not sure what your consumer wants. And that's why you put that mile-long buffet, so that he has a
choice
or an illusion of choice that I have so much to eat. Okay. However, it also begins with how we educate the consumer, and the big change can only come from there. Today, you have these healthy menus. In most hotels have healthy menus, which has got calories mentioned in it. People are choosing that, right? And these are only 4 or 5 dishes. People are choosing from that. So as we go, you would also see how buffets are changing. Earlier, there used to be heavy chefing dishes. They become smaller in size, so there is less wastage. But so, these are small things that will come into effect as the consumer starts demanding the changed perspective.
Yeah, and that's where our responsible traveler campaign comes into play. CB, this is a question for you. We've talked about luxury, and when we were talking earlier today, I said that to say that this whole responsible tourism thing is for the discerning traveler, for him to understand this is actually quite not all there. That's not the route that you would take when you're talking about mainstreaming responsible travel. How should we approach that? The responsible tourism is like inviolate. It has to be applicable to budget, mid-budget, luxury. It has to be applicable all over. How would you approach that?
See, it is a myth that was circulated saying sustainability and responsibility is an elitist approach. Unfortunately, that myth has been propagated for quite a while now. And even when you talk to some governments, they say, oh, all this is for the ultra rich. It's for those 5-star hotels only. It's not for, a Yatri Niwas elsewhere. And I disagree with that completely. I disagree with that because just surely from personal experience, I have encountered guests, on my resort, and I'm saying this was way back in 2006, 2007, when these terms didn't exist. I remember every guest which came to my resort, we used to take them on a tour of the resort to explain all aspects of the resort. about energy, water, waste management, architecture, supply chain, food chain. We used to actually do a tour of the resort and explain all this to the people. And the moment that was done, people listened and they went, oh, okay, I didn't know that. And the moment that happens, the penny drops and they start to respond. Now, I'm saying this, those days, my resort was priced at, I think, 5,000, 6,000 rupees per night for a couple, including all meals, which was really a middle sort of a level
budget,
resort. And I've had multiple instances in my memory bank of consumers who are that mid-level socioeconomic groups responding and telling their children, did you hear what uncle said? Take the banana, go find a place, banana peel and put it there. Why are you dropping wrappers on the ground? See what he said? When we brush our teeth, we have to use less water. Now, all this was coming from a middle-class socioeconomic group. And I always believe that, once a Frenchman told me, one of the most sustainable societies in the world is India. Even the milk packet is recycled. Those days in India, when you drank water from a glass, you never sipped it. You sort of held it that way. It is to ensure that too many glasses were not used in the house. Therefore, you didn't have to wash too much. You used much less water. Remember, these are value systems of a middle-class nation. India is a middle-class nation. We are moving up the ladder in terms of the Western societal norms of an upper-class nation. I hope to God, as we move up, we hold on to these value systems that we have as a nation of sustainability. So really, when we start talking to the guests of a hotel, of a 3-star, 1-star, 2-star hotels, this is something that is not outside their imaginative landscape. It is familiar. When they eat at home, they don't expect a mile-long buffet and take food and say, you know what, I'm going to throw this today. I always say that nobody sets out in the morning saying, today let me go destroy the environment. The human species is not wired for destruction. It happens because of ignorance. Therefore, I say that even amongst sustainability and responsible tourism sort of norms, it is something that we just need to remind people of again, and they will fall in place, like I have seen repeatedly over the last decade and a half of running my resort. So this comes from practically actually seeing the consumer response. So it is not elitist. It is something that is very, very easily adoptable. We just have to tell them and they will respond to it. I'm confident of that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you, CV. Thank you on that. Pablo sir, this is one question that Rakesh sir had, and he actually, when he talked about carrying capacities, I think in today's scenario, one of the places where we should be actually looking at carrying capacities is the wildlife environment. So what would your recommendations be? And from a tourism perspective, I mean, I always see that people kind of, when they look at locational advantage, can you have Pablo sir highlighted, please? Thank you. So in the tourism, when we are promoting wildlife tourism, the locational advantage is always as close as you are to a particular park gate or something like that, which is why around a park gate, the number of lodges that are around a particular premium zone or well-known gate is very, very high.
Yes, Shobha, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, very clear.
Okay. I think in the wildlife tourism sector, carrying capacity regulations have been in place for a very long time. More formally since 2012, when National Tiger Conservation Authority issued their famous guidelines under the directions of the Supreme Court of India. So now we have a proper formula, although mostly I disagree with that formula in many ways, but they have a very conservative formula for calculating carrying capacity of a forest area, how many vehicles, especially primarily for vehicles, how many vehicles can go in. And at the same time, when we put up this limit, we had to introduce online booking so that people know before they come whether they'll be able to get into the park or not. So because of these carrying capacity regulations, limitations only, many people are unable to get into the park, but they can get a hotel at the same time. So now, and we have tried many other ways as well to kind of distribute visitor load from between peak periods and non-peak periods. Like even at my time, they have started again. In Madhya Pradesh, they have now raised the price on weekends
park entries,
and holiday periods.
weekdays.
Some people had complained against it. Even I tried 10, 15 years ago. And similarly, we had different prices for premier zones. Kana zone and Kana used to demand double the price than any other zone. Now, in most tiger reserves, they have even started buffer zones where visitors can go and have reasonably good experience there. So the tariff for the buffer zones is much less than in the more premier kind of areas. So I think this has already started long ago. But the problem is that we have opened too little areas. So the putting carrying capacity limits on small area doesn't make a lot of sense. What we should do is maybe invite more people and open more areas so that the pressure on those areas per unit time is less, the impact is less, but we are still able to satisfy more people,
more and more people.
Maybe earn more benefits for both conservation as well as for the society.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for that, for responding to that. So I think we are actually overshot our time for about 10 minutes, but I'd like to, in conclusion, thank everybody who participated here. Pavla sir, for you, Hemant, CB, Helena, Atul sir, Rakesh ji, and also people from the ministry who joined, Kamalavardhan Rao sir, everybody for joining in and talking to us today about the various aspects of sustainable travel and how to mainstream it. As you can see from the conversation, everybody kind of seems to agree on one thing, that we should, the way forward is, of course, a collaboration, all of us coming together, holding hands and working towards a common goal. And that, I think, is very, very, is very, not only very forward thinking, it kind of augurs well for the future of tourism. The other thing I feel that Ram, the CB actually kind of really touched upon is that we need to go back to who we were as Indians as a society. I think we all know, and I grew up in the 80s and in the 80s. For us, traditionally, thrift, reverence to nature, respect for resources, sharing and hospitality is second nature. That's who we are all about. And consumerism shouldn't overtake us in such a way that we completely forget where we come from. And in fact, a lot of our scriptures talk about for being moderate, for being center focused and not like kind of overdoing it in the name of anything else. And I think that's a very important lesson that India actually can, like all traditional and old and ancient cultures, India can actually give out to the world of to the global conversation around sustainability and responsible travel. The other thing I'd like to tell you, and which I've been telling all my, I'm very fond of talking to people, and this is what I hear very loudly from all these speakers and participants, is the basics of conservation, the basics of responsible tourism is trying to be a responsible citizen of the globe. And that starts by being, which is as simple as ABC. It starts by being aware, and that's what Hemant talked about. Once you're aware that, what is the impact of this excess, what is the impact of this, this disregard, you are likely to be more and more focused towards not doing something. The second is, of course, believing that each one of us can actually make a difference to whatever it is. I mean, I read this somewhere saying if 7 billion people say no to one straw, it is 7 billion straws off the face of the earth. The second is about, of course, believing that each of us is accountable for what is happening to our planet. And once we are aware and we believe, I think the choices we make are definitely going to be responsible. And that is the whole crux of the Responsible Traveler campaign, taking this and taking accountability to everyone across the board, from the traveler to the private stakeholders to the government level. I think all of us work towards making tourism a force for change and a force for good. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Happy New Year once again. And I hope we can all work together, come together as a platform once again, to be talking about what is clearly something very, very close to all our hearts. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, Shobha. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Shobha. Thank you, everybody. Though traveling, I was still listening on.
Thank you, sir.
I really enjoyed. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.